Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the new media show. My name is Todd Proctor, and I'm glad to have you on board. Of course, I got my co-host, Mr. Rob Greenlee, and we've got a guest that is joining us here directly. He was having a little bit of audio problems, so I think he's fixing that. Rob, how are you?
I'm doing terrific, Todd. Doing terrific. Yeah, and we've got Bradley Davis.
Can you hear us, Brad?
He's calling in on Skype here to join us today. He's the CEO of PodJuicer.com.
Yeah, so I don't think he can.
Go ahead.
I don't think he can hear us yet.
I can hear you now.
Oh, there you go.
Awesome.
So as Rob was saying, we were just welcoming you to the show, and then of course you're trying to overcome the good old technical difficulties sometimes Skype gives us. So how are you?
I'm doing well. How are you guys doing?
We're doing good.
We're doing well at the end of week 7 of this national insanity lockdown. So yeah, we're doing good.
Yeah. Are you guys in Hawaii?
I'm not in Hawaii anymore. I used to be in Hawaii. I left Hawaii in June. So I'm now
all remote, just Skyping in.
Yeah.
Yep.
So I'm in Michigan now. And where are you at, Brad?
I'm in Louisville, Kentucky.
So you're in kind of I don't know, is your state starting to open up now?
We've been pretty conservative about opening up. So not really. We're kind of hitting our peak now.
Oh, I gotcha.
Yeah, we haven't opened back up quite yet.
Michigan isn't opening up either. I'm in rural Michigan. I'm a long ways from Detroit, where the hot spots are. And I think we got 50 cases here. And when I drove into town this morning to fire up the studio, it was just like a normal Saturday. I mean, and I think we've got a lot of businesses here that are thumbing the nose at our governor, who's got us on lockdown until the end of May.
Michigan's the one where you can't buy paint and you can't be on a boat if it doesn't have a motor or whatever. Okay.
As of this morning, or as of yesterday, we can buy paint and garden supplies, and we can mow our yard without getting arrested, and we can go on a lake on a boat as long as you can maintain 6 foot separation with the other person of your own family in your own boat. So anyway, it is what it is. But welcome to the show, everyone, and we've got a great things lined up to those. If you're watching on Facebook, make sure you say hello. We're on Twitter, we're on YouTube, we're on Twitch. So I primarily watch the chat in Facebook. So anyway, tell us. I don't know, Rob. Where do we want to start this morning?
Well, I guess the reason that I was wanting to have Brad on the show is just so we could all, as both you and me, Todd, and the podcast community, kind of learn a little bit about what the vision of PodJuicer is in the scheme of adding a lot more additional information in the podcasting sphere to listening platforms, and then also just off of their website, and kind of what their goals are, or what their, I think as you look to the future, I think adding more depth of knowledge about hosts and guests, and having a better kind of review system that's more kind of across the whole industry is great. But I'm sure that there's other things that Brad's working on that we don't know about, or something, or his bigger vision. So that would be a great place to start. Is just kind of, if you could give us a kind of an update on what the service does right now, and then we can talk about where you guys think this is going.
By the way, Brad, your background and everything is almost like pristine studio. How do you keep that so clean?
I actually am. I just listed my house, so my basement has never been this clean ever. It's the first time my basement has been clean, so that's why.
It's show ready. That's what it is then, right?
Yes,
yeah,
right.
just by sheer coincidence. But thank you. So I guess I'll just back up and kind of go through really quickly why PodJuicer started.
And maybe introduce yourself too, so everybody knows who you are. I'm sorry.
I'm Bradley. I'm one of the co-founders. There's 4 co-founders of PodJuicer. I'm one of the co-founders and the CEO. And I actually was not invited on this show. I was sloppy seconds because you guys invited Cole on the show.
Well, it was who we were talking to, just Cole, right?
Yes,
So,
Cole's not available, so you got me. Sorry.
yeah, there you go. No.
So like I said,
it's great to have you here. It's great to have you here. Yeah.
Thanks. I'm in Kentucky, and my background is in industrial sales, and so I was driving around the Midwest and selling widgets and weird things to manufacturers, and I was driving a ton and listening to more and more podcasts. And my personal frustration as a listener was that it was difficult for me to know before diving into a podcast episode whether it was going to be good. Simple discovery problem. And so I went to the internet. I'm a pretty heavy media consumer. And I looked for like a Letterboxd or a Goodreads or an IMDb, and I found nothing. I really couldn't find anything. The only things I kept coming across were kind of walled gardens. So they were kind of closed off, and it required me to have a certain OS or a certain device to access a community. So I basically went on Reddit and posted and said, "Hey, like, does this exist on the podcast subreddit? And if it doesn't exist, does anybody want to build it with me as a hobby?" And that's where I met our CTO, Ben. He's in Australia, and we've actually never met each other. And we started building PodJuicer. And the vision from the very beginning was just to have a third-party sort of agnostic social directory to, like you said earlier, to start collecting more and more information about the quality of an episode, the quality of a podcast, but also who's involved in it and who's on the episode and who's the producer, the editor, the host, the guest. And all that came together, and that's basically what PodJuicer is.
So, I think many of us are familiar with the site, and let me actually bring it up here on the, if I can do the little magic here, bring it up, and I think that we've be able to bring it up. And so today, how is your major, most of the input you're coming into this, so some of it is through API, but you're also getting some of the stuff by podcasters just manage their listings as well, right?
Yeah. So, and this is similar to the IMDb or Wikipedia model, where a lot of our data is crowdsourced, but then we also are building relationships with hosting platforms, and they start inputting their credits as well. So like you said, we have an API, and as you're uploading the episode as a creator, you can just quickly access and tag that episode with who's involved. So it's crowdsourcing, and then also partner data, and also we are building our tech more and more to make the crowdsourcing part easier and easier as we go.
One thing that we are aware of is that Apple has got the ability for some creators, and it's usually very top tier creators, to go in and basically put in guest credits, guest pictures. So, they've got a whole stuff that they can do that really kind of allows a top tier creator to have that extra metadata in their listing at Apple Podcasts. But currently there are no tags, no feeds, no process to actually automate that into a normal podcaster's blog post to get that into Apple Podcasts. And Apple doesn't seem to be inclined to increase greatly increase the number of folks that are going to have access to that feature. But what you guys have is essentially an open ability for any podcaster to get those same benefits that is available on Apple Podcasts, but over on PodJuicer. Is that a good analogy?
Yeah, and I think that going back to kind of the vision is certainly that this is the standard. Not only is it important for discovery from a consumer, from a listener perspective, but also just professionalizing podcasters in general. So if you're going to have more and more award ceremonies, you have to have some third party out there that's verifying that the people were actually on the podcast. Like, there has to be a professionalization of podcasting to help it grow and to help it mature. And so yeah, absolutely any podcaster can upload credits to PodJuicer. We tend to have really good SEO for podcast creators, so that does help with discovery. But it's absolutely our plan to have this data everywhere. So in different listening apps, hopefully in Apple Podcasts and Spotify as well. So everything that what podcasters can do is contribute to the site and build out our database more and more. And as we become the standard, it becomes easier and easier for listener apps to support our data.
Yeah. So how has that process been going of working with the listening platforms? I mean, are you seeing some inroads, or are you seeing resistance, or what are you seeing?
I think just by nature of being a fairly young company, relatively, there is always going to be some friction, but for the most part, it's been great. Where our credits are displayed in Player FM, and Pod News displays our credits. PodLink, the service, displays our credits, and there's got to be another 10 that we're currently in development with. So there's going to be more and more out there that start showing these credits. And honestly, just the challenge, the technical challenge of not only developing the crowdsourcing system, which is not easy, but also to scrape and to contribute the backlog of podcasting, because podcasting's been around for a while and there wasn't a credit solution. And so our users and our own team and our partner apps are now filling in that backlog. So just a matter of time and resources to have a robust data set. And now we have nearly 5 million episode credits. So we're definitely well on our way and are excited to partner with more and more apps.
One of the challenges, I've talked to you, to Colt, and about integration, and for many of us, it's just, we're already slammed as it is, and we've got, lots of companies asking for integration. And I think the big challenge for companies like mine is we're always trying to figure out, okay, if we integrate with something, number one, is it going to be valuable enough that our listeners are going to use it such a volume that the work that we're doing to integrate is worth it? Number two, is it going to drive value? And I think this is the things that we look at from being able to allocate dev resources to integrate with different platforms. I don't know, Rob, you guys just integrated with Headliner, and we looked at that as well. And probably sometime in the summer we'll get to that. But I think that for us, we're still a relatively small team. It's just a matter of, and we got our own projects we're working on. Sometimes it's hard to fit in a square of time to be able to do that integration.
Yeah, I would say that it's similar for Libsyn too, but I do think that it does get back to a certain amount of vision, right? Of where we see opportunities to help podcasters grow audience and become more successful, and the podcasting space grow. And I do think that an aggregation platform like PodJuicer does have the potential of a lot of value in the podcasting space, and making it easy for podcasters to input that data when they're publishing episodes, or when they're in that mindset of creating metadata, can really, if it can be funneled into a platform such as PodJuicer and then redistributed out to all the listening apps, versus the inverse of this would be creating new tags and RSS or those kind of things, Todd. So I mean, and I think that certainly is always an option here. And Brad, have you looked at the potential of maybe taking the data that you guys create out of this and integrating it with adding a layer of tags to RSS as a way to get it out to the listening platforms, or you guys primarily trying to do direct API relationships?
Yeah, so two things. First, Todd, I will integrate with you one day. You will.
It's going to happen, Todd.
I will get you. I wore my Captivate shirt as a passive aggressive way to say it, but it is. But to that point, it's our job to make it dead easy for you guys.
And you guys pretty much have. Yeah.
And we will make it easy. And we just finished our credits integration with Omni Studio, and it was a really good exercise for us to go over all of the crazy use cases, because we don't want to make it hard for you, and we also don't want to make your customer service any harder. And so we went through tons of scenarios with them, and I think we do have an easy process. RSS feed. So two things on that. One, we started this as an RSS feed project. We created a PodJuicer ID, and it was abused immediately, and it was really annoying. And we tried to figure out a way where we could, because the beauty of the PodJuicer credit system is it all goes through a moderation layer, and so the data that you see is accurate, and that has to be for it to be useful. So we put it in the RSS feed, and then everybody started putting Joe Rogan as their guest or host or producer or blog writer or whatever. And it became really annoying. And we tried to figure out a system to where we could have some sort of two-way RSS feed tech solution where we could catch those and then redirect and then edit it basically got to the point where we were trying to do something that was really easy to do with direct API. So with that said, though, the beauty of the RSS feed and what we also believe in, and as part of the essence of podcasting in general, is to have something that's open and accessible. And so our fear is that those big platforms out there develop some sort of credit system, and it's totally walled off, and independent podcasters aren't shown anywhere, and I just think that's kind of backwards. And so with that said, I guess we are using the API, but it's still open and accessible. I think that's really important.
And also, it's for me as a podcast listener, I don't go seeking, and it's every person's different, but I don't go seeking to listen to a specific guest. I go seeking listening to a show and a host. So I'm kind of curious, and that's just me. So I'm kind of curious, have you guys done studies or have any, because, okay, so if you're going to tell a podcaster, let's go ahead and put the credits in for a show that you had a guest on. What are you, from a listener standpoint, is that data actually, it's going to be work. So is that going to turn into someone looking for content?
Yeah. So most of our traffic comes from organic search results. And I think it's similar to movies, to where people are like, who is that guy in that movie? And they Google it, and then they find an IMDb page and then start having that discovery experience. So for us, we see tons of people Googling for specific names plus the word podcast. And then they usually can't find anything because there's not really a good credit solution. Or like, let's say, for example, they search for Barack Obama. Well, immediately you get, 50 pages full of far-right extremists, like podcast bashing Barack Obama. And so it's difficult to kind of surface to the searcher that content. And so yeah, we see that it's a pretty big part of the discovery experience on our end. So most people will come to us through Google searches. And I think that there's a lot of especially people trying to get into podcasting who have that first kind of experience through Google. So yeah, I think it's definitely part of the discovery process. And then also just having people as this sort of cross section of discovery, I think is table stakes for other media verticals, where if you're searching for a specific person, if you have that credits layer that's connecting shows together, it makes for a richer and better search experience as well. So that it may not be obvious that when you're searching for, I don't know, AC/DC on Spotify, that Bon Jovi comes up or whatever, but that's connecting people. And I think that podcasting really needs that for a better discovery experience.
So you mentioned that the search traffic coming back to your site is this. So that brings up a question I have. So, is fundamentally podcasters making a mistake in not having good show notes with metadata that would drive them back to their site versus your site?
I think,
So I'm just kind of playing devil's advocate here a little bit.
yeah, I think that's a good point. I think basically for most independent podcasters, their domain authority probably won't be as high as ours. That's just probably the case.
Right.
And that will probably over time remain the same, and that gap will probably widen. And so what our job is to make sure that we're kind of good stewards of that domain authority. And so if you do that search and then find us, we do make it very easy to then open up that podcast episode in whatever app of your choice, and to have a good jumping off point. So yeah, that's a good point. I think basically the way I view it is, again, let's like go to look at movies. You're going to get an IMDb result when you search for actors, and it just doesn't make sense for every single studio or every single movie to try to make their movie website the main discovery mechanism through search. At least that's how I see it.
Rob, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I do think that search is a big factor here, but I also think when I think about your service is the cross linkage between guests and the hosts, and giving deeper metadata about both of those things in the podcast listening experience. I think that the bigger goal that I see when I think of your service is to somehow as a marketing platform for the podcasting space, and how do we, not unlike what the IMDb does for the movie and TV industry, but you guys actually go to another level, and that's around listener reviews and feedback, and building that strong community layer, which is an interesting opportunity also from the standpoint of building deeper relationships with audiences. I mean, do you guys think about those aspects too, of being a real place that people can build conversations with their audiences? And
Yes.
and do you have any tools to be able to have that experience maybe displayed on that podcast website or anything like that?
Yeah, so we really want ultimately for every podcast page to be a one-stop shop for whatever you need. So the kind of like catch-all is the information source. So what is information? So for Reply All, let's take Reply All. You want to know who Alex Goldman is. You want to know who PJ Boat is. You want to know what else they've done. Maybe they have a live event. Maybe you want to buy a ticket. Maybe they have T-shirts. Maybe they have a website. We want to link to all of that in one hub, and then also make it to where our users, because maybe Alex and PJ don't have time to do that. We want to make it easy for our users to input information like that. So yes, as you said, utilizing our domain authority to be used as a marketing tool for the podcaster is definitely our goal here, and also connecting with potential listeners. That's more down the road, but we do definitely have really interesting segments of people, especially audio drama enthusiasts. I think they've found a home in our service to where they can connect with each other and find shows, and we hope to spread that through other verticals. But then also we want to make tastemakers. I think podcasting has suffered from being too nice for a long time, and maybe that's controversial, but when Wondery releases a new show, we have to know as consumers if it's good. And I think Wondery is great, and it probably is, but there's certainly varying levels of quality within every publisher. And right now, if you go look at iTunes ratings and reviews, it's like, they're all amazing. And there are
people actually read that.
Do what?
People actually read the iTunes reviews?
I think they do. I think consumers are are super into reviews. The power of reviews is powerful. Like look at Amazon.
I've never had an audience member tell me they found my site because of a review. They found my site because of a listener to listener referral.
I agree with you. I don't think reviews are part of the discovery journey, but they are part of the should I give this podcast a try? I think that social proof is important, but it's too easy to game, and it's too nice. And so what we want to do is create a place. I don't mean to create some toxic environment,
Sure.
but to create a place to where when you look at an iTunes review, who knows who's who? There's no picture necessarily, and there's no social proof that you should pay attention to that review. On PodJuicer, what we're developing now is, say we have and we do have a few of these people, an audio drama enthusiast who's rated 750 audio dramas. Well, you probably want to pay attention to that person because they've listened to way more audio drama than you have. And so kind of developing those people, those critics, and then having their reviews and ratings being more prominent, we think that's really important for the industry. And that's a big part of our vision for ratings and reviews, is for them to, like you said, Todd, not just to be like some throwaway thing that you really shouldn't pay attention to, but to have them matter and to have them start directing more consumers. I mean, look at the power of the tomato meter and the IMDb ratings for movies. I mean, the studios have sued Rotten Tomatoes because their viewership has just dived off because they have a 40% or whatever.
Right.
Not saying that that's ideal, but that's important. It's good for consumers to know whether or not something's good before diving in. And right now for podcasting, I just don't think that exists hardly at all. So we definitely think that's important.
Yeah, it's also very, very subjective too. So I mean, so you need to build kind of the reputation of the reviewers too, right? So, you know, I mean, who do you trust and who don't you trust, and how do you keep agendas out of that, right?
Right, and that's hard. So, because I agree with you, I think what's more interesting is the opinion of 5 tastemakers or experts versus 500 just normal listeners. Not saying that they're bad or not useful, but building a system to where critics can have more of a platform. And, you know, on PodJuicer, you can follow people and then see and get updated when they leave reviews. So I think actually we were wanting to build out more of a critics part of the site. And so we wanted to bring in podcast critics and onboard them and give them special privileges and badges and whatever. There weren't any. There's like less than 10. It's crazy. So we have to build them, and that's right. That's what we're working on. It's just amazing.
It's an opportunity too, I think. I mean, if they don't exist already, then maybe which is interesting that they don't exist, right? I think most of the tastemakers that I've seen, I think in this medium, have been usually journalists, right? That have been writing articles.
Mm-hmm.
Yes,
and that's about all that I've seen happen out there. But like Todd was saying, most of it is word of mouth sharing. I mean, people that social proof happens one-on-one.
Yeah, and I think that can be kind of mechanized and put on a platform. I think that's possible. It's hard, but I think it's possible.
Yeah.
You know,
what do you think, Todd?
I just I don't know, just the way I consume podcasts is, I'm not a good use case study, to be quite frank.
I'm not either. I'm a power user.
So
I'm sure we all are. So it's hard.
For me, it's about, again, I don't go looking, I look at the host and the content. The guest to me is almost secondary. The review, because there's a lot of podcasts out there that I listen to, and I'm a little slower right now. I'm not listening to as many as I have been, but for many years, I listened to 100 new podcasts every 2 weeks. And I think a lot of podcasts get I would say 80% of them are good, and are, well thought out and produced well. There's definitely 20% out there that's junk, but the 80% out there that are, or 80 or 85% that are good. And I shouldn't say the 20% are junk, but they're just a little early. Maybe they haven't developed their voice and haven't developed their timing, and so I shouldn't say they're junk. They're just a little early in development, and the other 80% are pretty well polished. They're up on their game. They've got a plan for doing their show. You can tell they've done their research, and then but they never have heard of. They've got 50 listeners, and no one has ever heard of them, heard of that show before, and why? It's there's a lot of factors there. So the factors being, maybe the podcaster doesn't have their own website, maybe the podcaster's doing no social media posting, maybe there's this whole plethora of things you have to do to be found. So I think that anything we can do to get podcasts discovered and listened to is good.
Yeah, I mean, for us, we have made a home for those power users. And again, back to like the audio drama example, we have people who listen to literally every single audio drama that's ever made, and then they rate and review it. And so, finding those kind of long tail examples and surfacing those is a huge opportunity, because I disagree with you. I think 20% content is good and 80% is bad. But I think we only find 1% of that 20%, and there's a lot of network effect at play too, to where the major publishers have this huge advantage over the independent podcaster, and so that's an issue, because of the low barrier to entry for podcasting. Anybody can create a masterpiece in a basement, and that hopefully continues to be the case. But there has to be better and better discovery mechanisms to find those.
Yeah, I think it's a little bit of a unique case to some degree. I think what Todd was trying to say is that he thinks a lot of shows are good. Is that in the podcasting medium, it's a little different, I think, than radio, TV, and music, from the standpoint of the content. To say something is good or something is bad is very subjective in the podcasting medium.
Subjective.
And I think it's hard to bucket shows. I mean, each one of us has a different gauge on what quality is. And I think shows tend to create themselves and find their audience, right? I guess there's some application to this in other media forms where shows start and find their audience over time, but in most of the other mediums, the content doesn't really have the luxury of time to do that. Right. They're either canceled, they're deemed as failures. Podcasting grows and develops over long periods of time, typically, and they tend to grow audience based on the type of content that they produce. And to immediately say only 20% of content in the podcasting space is good, I think is kind of missing the uniqueness of the medium, and how the mechanism of people finding shows that they like because maybe they're different, maybe they're unique, maybe there's a compatibility with the host. And I think what your platform, I think its big opportunity is to create connections with the host and the creators, with people that have an affinity for them. And I think Todd was alluding to this too, that shows and over the 10 plus years that we've done this show, I've gotten feedback for most of the period of the time that people like episodes that just have Todd and I in them and not have guests. So you kind of have this orientation towards, and when I bring guests on, it's someone like yourself that brings a lot of value to the conversation on the show. It's not like this is an interview show. It's not. But I think it's an interesting example of what I'm trying to say, is that the personalities of the hosts in most podcasts, and I think true crime may be a little bit of a unique like fictional podcasts, true crime shows tend to be ones that aren't really personality driven. They're story driven. So it is a little different analogy that's going on here. But most shows have a very strong kind of relationship with their audience based on that personal relationship and personal affinity with the host and the personality of the host and the host's reputation. And I think that is far more important than a gauge of what's quality or not.
There was a point I was going to make, but I kind of lost track here. I think, too, is a thing that we have to... okay, I know my point I was going to make. So your point to trust in the reviews is critical. I don't necessarily untrust an Amazon review, and be honest with you, I haven't read, an Apple review, but I haven't read an Apple review on a show in 10 years. I don't read reviews of shows.
Right.
I have read Amazon reviews, product reviews, but then when I look at those, if it's a product that is coming from, let's say it's a Chinese company, I can almost be guaranteed that 50 to 75% of the reviews that are on Amazon are fake. So I usually go down and read the 1, 2, and 3-star reviews to get the real review of a product versus reading the 5-star reviews. I don't want to read I want to hear where people had issues. And that's sometimes where the truth really lays in a product. So we've all seen it in different Facebook groups where, hey, let's do trading reviews and podcasters reviewing podcasters' podcast. And it's more of it's drove me crazy for years when I see that, because you do me a Apple review, I do you an Apple review, and it's all about, so of course they're going to get a 5-star review from a fellow podcaster. Very rarely will a fellow podcaster, or they won't write the review. I've been asked to review shows before. I said, well, maybe you really don't want me to, but here's my feedback. Instead, I can feedback versus a review. So somehow, in your guys' system, you guys have to build a trust base so that if I go over and read a review on PodJuicer about a show, that I can almost be assured that the person that did the review has given me the real deal and give me his real opinion. If I just see a bunch of 5-star reviews on a show, to me that is almost, again, it's going back to the Amazon effect. So I don't know, how you talked a little bit about building that trust factor with reviews. How do you think it's been so far from the people who are using your service? What's the feedback that you're getting for the reviews that have been submitted?
So I totally agree. Review systems are pointless if they're gamed easily. So for us, a couple things that we've developed to mitigate that. One is our users get followers and get a following. And so when that person gets more and more follows and more attention on the reviews, it's more likely that person is being truthful. We haven't seen that aspect of the site gamed by any means.
That's good.
And then also likes on reviews. So just having the ability to have a review that has 50 likes, again, that can be gamed, but we have not seen it.
Yeah.
We also, because we've had these issues before, we also do things like if we see 50 likes on a review coming in from a single IP address, we detect that and ban it, because certain true crime shows, I won't name any names, and their soldiers tried to do that. We've had robots where we've had just a stream of 5-star reviews come in from one of those promoter companies, and we built systems to detect that and ban it. So we're pretty on top of that stuff, because gaming reviews, if we lose that trust, then it's pointless. So you have to be on top of things like that. So yeah, a mixture of social proof, but also just trying to defend against the attacks of the evil spammers is definitely a huge part of what we do.
Yeah, that happens in stats too. So let's talk. There's some comments that are coming in. JD says, one thing, Todd, is that people aren't hiding in anonymity on PodJuicer. Okay, that's fine.
They can. So some people are anonymous and some people aren't.
Okay.
Because I think anonymity is actually important. Sometimes we have some secret podcast influencers on our platform who use anonymous profiles because they want to be able to leave a 3-star review without getting crap for it. So with that said, though, to the commenter's point, most of our user profiles have a headshot and Evoterra face and headshot and like the name right there. So that does help not being completely anonymous like a 4chan or a Reddit.
Right. I don't write reviews because it's very obvious why. If I write a review and it's critical, someone's going to be like, well, go screw Blueberry. I'm never doing business with
Todd,
them.
you would be such a great influencer.
Oh, no. That's not a good idea.
You so many follows.
So
Todd, take the good with the bad.
No. Just like talking politics, not a good idea. So,
but yet we do it.
Yeah, but we don't. Yeah, we do it in our own way on this show. So,
right.
JD says you can certainly say objectivity is a scripted. If a scripted show, audio drama, true crime, storytelling is good or not, with a traditional podcast format, the talk show, it's far more subjective. That's right. Rick says, here's the thing. Most passive listeners won't write a podcast review. So let's call that a P2 listener in a radio jargon. It's usually a fan of the show, a P1, that will, if that person is already a fan, it's biased toward the podcaster and or podcast. So how can I trust that as an objective review system? So again, I think too that there's all kinds of stuff that runs. So I think I'm going to answer the question for Rick, for you, and tell me if I'm right or wrong. Your point is that if I come on your system and I write a review about Rick's show and 10 people like my review of Rick's show, that must indicate that my review was accurate. So if I get 10 thumbs downs about my review, which I don't know if you do, if I get 10 thumbs downs on my review, that must mean that people did not agree with me. So I think that is where
there's some social proof there.
You build the social proof there.
Right.
Yeah. So we do not have thumbs down because of brigading.
Oh.
Right.
From some research on that, we realized that is just so easy to game.
Yeah, that's true.
Oh, it is.
Go downvote. It's like on Reddit. I posted something on Reddit this morning, and 2 people downvoted it, and I know who they are, and I know that they actually work for a competitor of ours. They downvoted it, and I'm just like, come on.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah.
Or actually, they're social media influencers with a competitor of ours.
Oh, are you gonna? What are their names?
No comment.
But back to the point of the commenter, we see on the internet as a whole, and we've seen this with PodJuicer, the 1% rule, where 1% of internet users contribute and 99% consume.
Right.
And that is so. I think I agree that generally reviews skew towards positivity from the super fans. And so our job and what we I think are doing a better job doing lately is converting those consumers to contributors. That's hard because most people on the internet don't do that. So making it very, very easy, and maybe that doesn't mean leaving a review. Maybe that means liking a review, or maybe that means following of the reviewer themselves.
Yeah,
that's a social proof point to make it as frictionless as possible. But yeah, totally right. Like we do see a skew towards 5 stars, and honestly, we try to. Lately, it's been skewed more towards like a 3.5, 4, and that I think that's helpful.
Go ahead, Rob.
I was just gonna throw a monkey wrench into this conversation a little bit. From what I've seen from all the years that I've done shows too, is that some of your most avid listeners are sometimes the ones that give you the negative reviews.
Oh yeah.
And it's an interesting kind of paradox that happens with this is that, and for many years on my nationally syndicated radio show that I did, I would get these flame emails from listeners just ripping me up one side and down the other about what I did on my show. But the thing is, I would get that type of email from this listener every week. So
Yeah.
just because you give a negative review about a show or an episode doesn't necessarily mean that listener isn't listening or can't be built upon as a community member from an opposite perspective. Now, Todd, I'm sure you've seen this as well.
I wish Sal from New York, if you're out there, please, I miss you. No, I'm serious.
Rip me again.
I think he just got so sick and tired of ripping me, he just finally went away. Because I would just dog him right back in the show. So it was like I would read every email and I still do read every email that comes in, positive or negative. And now more or not, I get people saying, "Do not read my comment on the show."
Right.
They don't, because or use a different name or sign me off as this. But Sal used to be like, man, he was brutal on me. But you know what it really did was I took his point, and if it was something was valid, then I adjusted. But Sal got to the point where he was trying to direct the flavor of the show, and I'm like, Sal, go make your own show. Maybe he did, So yeah, Sal from Brooklyn, I do miss you from listening to the podcast. But anyone that was listening to the shows in early, he'd come in and just rip me. And
well, I think you bring up a really good point in that a podcast, it has hundreds, thousands of episodes. And so one thing that we did from day one is allow for reviews on the episode level, because there should be room to have a 5-star opinion of a podcast and a 2-star opinion of an episode.
Sure.
And that, I think that granularity is really important, because I always see big popular shows go up and they have one episode and they have 10,000 5-star reviews. That doesn't even make sense.
Mm-hmm.
So I think an episode review is obviously harder to get, but much more powerful. And that's available and possible on the PodJuicer platform. So good thing.
Yeah, because as a good podcaster, I guess it depends on the genre. What you want to create is emotions in your listeners.
Yeah.
And sometimes that is a negative emotion, and sometimes it's a positive emotion, and sometimes it's a little bit of both, So things are complicated. Humans are complicated emotional beings. So, just like, what Todd and I do with the show isn't always seen as positive. It's seen as controversial, and it isn't like we strive for that, but sometimes it just comes from just being authentic with what you're doing. I mean, we're people that have opinions, and we have observations that aren't always consistent with what other people see, and sometimes that stirs things up a little bit. Which is not a bad thing.
I learned something when I was a teenager from my grandfather. My grandfather was very opinionated, and I pretty much knew where he laid on most subjects. And but he would have, a couple farmers would get together, and they would be standing around having a beer, and they chewed tobacco and spitting on the floor and doing what farmers do. And I would be sitting in the corner, and my grandfather would just flip a switch, and he'd play devil's advocate, but he came across as if he was the foremost expert. And they would just get to the point where they were just about yelling at each other, because he would flip the switch on them, and they may have known in the back of his mind that he was not really thinking that way. And it usually was something politics or something. Right. And, but then he would come back to him, and they would all have a good laugh about it. Well, a good podcaster will find a place to ride that line and not necessarily go completely devil's advocate, but make your audience go, whoa, 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 whoa. And that's where oftentimes you invoke the biggest discussions. And then that is where a new listener to a show, my God, if you have a new listener listening to that podcast, they're going to go, this guy sucks. And he's going to go and write a review.
Right.
But your audience has been with you for 20 episodes. They know who you are, and you're twisting things a little bit. That's the best fun I have in podcasting when I play devil's advocate to a certain extent, or get up on a soapbox and complain. That's where I'm trying to trigger the audience to having a reaction. And there's a fine line.
A lot of the big, nationally syndicated radio talkers, it's what they do all day long. 3 hours a day is exactly what we're talking about.
Conservative talk
here.
Radio. That's the entire basis of the whole thing.
Right. So it's not a new art form.
It works.
It's definitely an art form.
So, if I get a 2-star review, I probably pay attention to a 2 or 1-star review more than I will a 5-star because I know my show's great, right? So it's the critic that, right? All podcasters think their show's great.
Always pay attention more to the negative than we do to the positive.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's human nature.
Embrace the burn,
Right.
and not Bernie, but embrace the burn of the podcast review audience.
So Bradley, what this means is you should put the 1-star reviews at the top.
Yeah.
Not the 5-star reviews.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, that's what Amazon does. You see
Right.
the most useful good review and the most liked negative review, and so, I mean, we can do that. Sure.
Yeah. I mean, what most people think, I want to get 5-star reviews, but that's not necessarily how Todd and I think. We want to get the 1s and 2s.
Everyone listening, make sure to rate and review this 1 star.
Bring it on, man. Bring it on.
and Jeff says something good here. He says you can have a great show and an off episode. You can't hit a home run. So I even come back on follow on episode. Man, I'm sorry that last episode sucked. I'll just say it.
Yeah.
I'm like, I was tired. I probably shouldn't have done a show. Give me a mulligan for that one.
That feedback's important too.
Yeah.
I think that's for a podcaster to have your listeners say, "Hey, that was bad."
Yeah, that was bad.
Keeps everybody honest. I think it's good.
Well, and this is also part of that conversation I was talking about perception of quality, right? I think we have to be careful on how we judge content, especially in the podcasting space. What's quality and what's not? I think it's up to the audience to really decide that.
Right.
Individual audience members.
So I do have to say something on a personal level here, and this is a comment from JD. Hey, JD, thank you that you like the new shiny mug. I do appreciate that. Hey, by the way, for you bald guys out there, how do you always trim the hair that's like this crook of your ear correctly every time? So someone give me a good tip on how to make sure I don't end up with a burr of hair there, which I continue to do when I shave my head. But anyway,
Todd, do it very carefully.
Well, that's the problem. That's the problem with a razor.
Are you using a razor?
Oh yeah, I'm using a regular razor. Yeah, I haven't bought one of those. They have those things that's got wheels on it.
Yeah,
I haven't tried one of those yet. Tried to actually use
cool
wheels on it.
They got a wheel so it rolls over your head and pulls the razor across. Yeah, but actually, what it is the problem is right. You guys are looking for those of you that are listening. It's right there where your glasses meet your ear. That area right there. That's really hard to cut on your own. without nicking yourself.
You have your own lawnmower? Is that what this is?
No, I just use a standard razor on it, but
I know, but it's got wheels, Todd. So.
No, mine doesn't have wheels. Mine
it doesn't.
Mine's just
have wheels.
a regular face razor. I haven't bought
caveman, bald caveman right now.
And by the way, any women that want to touch my head, it's $1. It's $1 to rub my bald head.
Was that your new revenue model?
That's
now?
right. That's right. Because I keep going in places, and I had this. I just want to touch your head. I'm like, that's too. Yeah, maintain your 6 foot of separation here.
Yeah, that or get longer arms.
Something to that effect. Yeah. Anyway, I don't know if that's probably this conversation is politically incorrect, and I apologize ahead of time.
Yes, it's very politically incorrect, especially right now.
Oh, that's a fact.
Yeah. So
anyway,
yeah. Bradley, you can see where we go off the rails sometimes. So,
and it's all from a comment from JD. It's your fault, JD. Getting back on topics, I recently got a 2-star Apple review, so solely because I mentioned on the show that I'm an Android user. Hey, so when I was in the early days of podcasting, I was hardcore PC. And there's actually a story behind this. It's actually a pretty good one. We've got a few minutes. I'll share this. So I was a hardcore PC user. I had a bunch of buddies that were Mac users. As a matter of fact, I had a buddy that was so hardcore Mac, he was buying Mac stock when Mac stock was like in the tank. And he is now a very rich man because he sends me a haha note on Facebook every once in a while. Because he kept telling me, buy Apple stock, buy Apple stock. But anyway, So I was PC.
It's same with Amazon. I kick myself every day now. I didn't buy Amazon.
He was buying it. It was like $2 or $3 or something. You know, it was insane. Yeah. So anyway, I got a Mac Mini, and because when I wrote my book on podcasting, I needed a Mac, and I went and used a Mac Mini for a while, and I had huge issues with Macs, and I was always bitching and moaning and talking about it. And my audience, I had half my audience as a tech audience listening to using Macs, half that were using PCs. And so I finally ended up becoming what I called an equal opportunity basher. I was bashing PCs and bashing Macs as much as possible back and forth. But one day I just said, man, if I could just talk to Steve Jobs and give him a piece of my mind about this Mac, all I need is 15 minutes. 2 weeks later, my phone rang. And it was a gal on the other phone. She said, Mr. Cochran, do you have 15 minutes to talk to Steve Jobs? Sure. 15 seconds later, I'm on the phone with Steve Jobs, and I had a 15-minute conversation about the Mac with Steve Jobs. And it was pretty frank. I told him what pissed me off about the Mac Mini. And it was about the time that the first MacBook Pro with an Intel chip was being released. And a few days later, whatever, I get this call from the Ala Moana in Hawaii Apple Store. And I got this call, hey, we need you to come down to the store. We have something for you. Well, I had a good friend, his name was Ryan Ozawa, and he went down to the store with me, and Steve Jobs had sent me a MacBook Pro on the house.
What?
True story.
No way.
True story. Absolutely.
Yeah, I believe it.
True story.
Wow.
That was in very early days of the whole staff. I walked in there and I said, I got called. I was told to come down. And it was like the seas parted in the store. I become this revered Apple user or whatever, right? They come out and they gingerly give me this, this MacBook Pro. And it's like, they're like, yeah, this is courtesy of Mr. Jobs. And I'm just like dumbfounded. There's the whole Apple Care staff or whatever standing there. So it was pretty cool. I've got to start.
That wasn't that long ago. The Intel chip on the Pro was.
It was on the 17-inch MacBook Pro. Yeah. So, but again,
what year was this?
I don't remember.
It was probably 2008, 9.
I don't remember.
I was going to say 2008.
Yeah.
And then.
Mm-hmm.
But I'd had that Mac Mini and been bitching about it, and that was because I bought that in 2005. So it had been some time. Don't get me wrong, but just at some point during the show, someone on the inner circle Apple must have told him that I was bitching about Macs. Who knows? It was pretty. I've got a story about Donald Trump too. I talked to Donald Trump in my car once as well before he was a presidential candidate.
Who are you? What is going on? I'm on hallowed ground.
No, what happened is with him, I had two guys call me.
I've heard these stories like 4 or 5 times over the years too.
I had two guys that wanted to do The Apprentice. Apprentice something. And when talking to this guy, and I said,
Apprentice?
Yeah, whatever it was. And, they were going to do some series of things. And anyway, they were going to take it podcasting. And I said, you're not going to do that. Trump organization owns that. And, that's you're going to have to ask permission. You're going to have to get licensing and all. I said, call it something else. Oh, we'll get Donald to approve it. And I'm like, whatever, And about at least like a week later, I'm on the highway in Hawaii coming out of the H1 tunnel, and my mobile phone rang, and I clicked answer, and it was just typical Trump. Todd, Donald Trump. Hey, I know you talked to my guys over there about doing that podcast on The Apprentice. Blah, 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 blah. I didn't say like 2 words. And it went on for like 45 seconds. It said, my people will be in touch. Click. It was literally less than a minute, and I think I said 3 words.
Huh. Wow.
Yeah. So anyway,
incredible.
That's funny. It was, and I laugh about that. I tell people that today, and it was purely classic Trump.
Yeah, Yeah.
So did he ever do an apprentice?
They never did
podcast?
nothing. Never heard from him.
Too busy doing Trump steak.
You know, who knows, and why did he call me? I don't know. I have no clue,
Why did Steve Jobs call you?
Well, because I was bitching about the Mac on my show. I had a huge, show's pretty huge following,
Huh.
and we actually
Amazing.
we did talk about, after I got calmed down, I was actually talking to Steve Jobs, we really did talk about where my issues laid with the product. And it was a serious conversation. So,
Awesome.
and he was
Very cool.
nice. He wasn't an asshole. I heard people have had conversations with him in the past that weren't so nice. He was nice, very cordial.
Well, you were a customer.
Well, I was a
Nice.
bitching customer.
Well, you were, but he's not going to make you madder than you already were.
No, and what do I have now? It's all Macs here besides the TriCaster and this, one token PC. So,
Yeah, but now you're talking about moving back to PC, Todd.
yeah. So Rodna says, I remember that Apple story. So it must have been around 2005, 2000 timeframe. I remember Zachary was so impressed. Yeah. So someone is in the chat room remembers the story.
All right.
So it was very early. And I think I've got that Mac. I wish it was signed. It'd be worth a lot of money, but
Yeah, it would be for sure.
yeah. Anyway, so
Okay.
we're off topic here, but you never know what your show's going to do. What, who's listening.
Right.
And we know
Yeah.
we know this show is, hey, Apple folks, hey, how you guys doing? Hey, Google, how you guys doing? Oh, Rob, I was going to bring this up at the beginning of the show. NDAs suck.
Uh-huh.
I'm under a new NDA as of yesterday.
Oh, you are.
I am. I'm under a new NDA. NDAs suck because I can't tease you because I think you're under the same NDA.
It's very likely, Todd. Very likely. Yes.
Yeah. The big things are coming to the podcasting space, and that's all I can say.
Yes, they are. Yes.
Exciting.
We can't say anything about it, but they're coming. Whatever it is.
I think I know what you're talking about.
I-
I'm not under an NDA, but I also don't want to say it if I'm wrong. So
There's some stuff coming next week. So
Oh, this
Exciting.
one's not coming next week.
it's something. Okay. All right.
Yeah.
I thought maybe you were talking about what was coming next week.
No, it's not. I'm not talking
Okay.
about what's coming next week. Something is coming sometime.
Oh, okay. Well, all right. Yeah.
And no, we can't
There's
share
always
notes.
those. There's always those.
Yeah.
Yes.
So if and I'm not under NDA with Google. So if Google's bringing their stuff next week, that's good. But we'll see if it happens next week.
It's going to.
Oh, good.
What
I
is
didn't
it?
say that it was Google. I just said something is coming next week.
Okay.
Definitely.
So they're the only ones that are okay. It's Google. But
Okay.
no, I think the shows have significant impact with their audiences, and to make a point Rob made earlier is that we've had some big guests on this show, and they don't ever seem to drive the needle. So the shows him and I just do weird stuff, or maybe we've called somebody out, typically will drive the needle more than a big guest. So folks that do interview shows all the time, they don't have any other, if they're just doing interview, they really don't have a non-interview show to see what would happen if there was an interview during their podcast. So maybe, if I'm a podcast that's doing interview shows all the time, maybe I'm just going to do a couple solo shows here and there and see how the audience reacts to a solo show where you're talking about a topic that is related to the type of guest you have on.
So we're gonna eventually measure that impact, because since we have the people credits, we can see with a baseline of a show if that guest appearance causes a spike. So that'll be something interesting to see, because I'm sure it's relative to the audience, but I'm sure some names cause more spikes than others. Like Elon Musk, I think, was one of Joe Rogan's biggest interviews of all time.
Right.
So
Now
it'd be interesting
that's
to
a
measure
name
that.
though. That's a real name.
Yeah.
Right.
You know?
And he's a controversial character, so it makes sense.
Yeah, he
Yeah.
definitely.
I'd love to have him on a show and not be smoking any weed and just talking about stuff that he's doing. He could have his own podcast and have millions of people I'd subscribe to it immediately.
Absolutely. Just to have him talk about his ideas would be worth his
But Todd, he's such a horrible presenter, though. Are you sure?
Yeah, okay, so here's the thing, though.
I know, but it gets back to our quality question, right? Is it
it's
the who or is it the what?
Okay, so this show, you got a couple of guys on here that we're rambling and talking about crazy stuff, but every once in a while, maybe Rob and I, you and have just a magic moment. All right, it's a one or two takeaway from the show, and maybe we just stumble upon it by pure luck. When you're listening to a show like from a guy like Elon Musk, you're listening for that magic moment of that one nugget. Because 90% of the stuff that's in this show is available on 90% of the other shows. Right. So it's just that nugget that you're looking for. And the nugget is sometimes all you need to, where do you think of, I've been listening to a podcast before and it's triggered something in my brain that would be like, whoa, we should, and it wasn't maybe completely related, but it fired a neuron that made me think about something creative or something different to do. Mm-hmm. So that's what we listen to podcasts for. Maybe you're going to get into the stories and get depth, but I think some of us listen to shows just for that nugget that's there. I might be wrong, but.
Well, I think that's part of it. I think it's people tune in because they either like the person that's the host, they like the topic, and shows that do a variety of different topics or that they have different personalities on the show as guests tend to have a lot of churn in their subscriber numbers, right? So, but shows like what we typically do here, where we're pretty consistently the two hosts, you tend to see more consistent download numbers week over week. Where if you're bringing in a different guest every week, the popularity of that guest to some degree does drive some fluctuation in the numbers. And if an audience feels like that they're not getting enough of the primary hosts, they may not listen if they don't have an interest in the topic that the guest brings.
Yeah.
So, I think you have to kind of realize that the dynamics of podcasting, I ran the Zoom podcasting platform for many years in the early days of this medium. And what I saw in the numbers was about a 50% weekly churn on subscriptions, which means, and I don't know if that's consistent with what's happening now, you don't really see many of the platforms talking about churn and subscriptions, because I think that there's more of an emphasis now towards just click play experiences and following or liking or that kind of functionality now. But subscriptions was really a good example of what I'm talking about, people churning in out of podcasts. So usually what we see, and you see in the Edison numbers, are always about 5 to 6 subscriptions or podcasts that an average listener listens to. What I saw in the numbers is that may be the case, that it's 5 or 6 subscriptions, but what I also saw was 3 out of that 6 were churning out every week. So people were trying new shows on a regular basis.
I guess we'll have to see, and maybe you guys over there at PodJuicer will be able to dig into this a little bit too, and maybe that's something you can get from some of your data. Maybe you can get some listener insight of how long they've listened to a show and been a fan, because I've said it 100 times. The Geek News Central, I have I figure people last about 2 years with the show, and then they leave for a while. And then
it's that churn out that I'm talking about.
Yeah,
right?
It's there's numbers trickling off because they're sick of they're sick to listen to me, and they go off the other end and they go away and listen to something else for 2 years, and then they come back and they say, "Oh, you're still here." I get those emails all the time, and I don't think a lot of podcasters don't get to the point where that churn happens because they don't stick with their show long enough to get to that point.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Definitely. We try to pay attention to all sorts of things like that.
Sure. So what direction are you guys getting involved in around podcast metrics? Are you guys trying to be a resource for that as well and aggregate metrics at all for shows?
Yes. So we, by being this agnostic player in the industry, it's our eventual goal to be able to aggregate things like play data. So that'll be something that's coming fairly soon. Is some partnerships with some player apps that will allow consumers to see things like metrics, but also to allow podcasters to see some of that behind the scenes as well. Because I think it's actually more interesting from the consumer perspective to see things like metrics and how that influence things like rankings and charts. So yeah, it's definitely on our roadmap on both sides for the consumer experience to get an idea of the reach or the scale of a podcast, but from the podcaster's perspective to get more insights on an episode basis of what makes an impact. Does a guest make an impact? Does length make an impact? There's all kinds of factors that I think there's still quite a bit to be had in analytics for podcasting. So yeah, the issue is that it's very difficult to come across a lot of that data. So it's a challenge.
And by the way,
Yeah.
go ahead.
Go ahead, Todd.
I was just going to add the first Intel 17-inch MacBook Pro was introduced in April of 2006.
Oh, we're far off. Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Good old Google.
So Bradley, how do you see yourself kind of tapping into the ecosystem of getting those metrics? Are you looking at like maybe a redirect relationship with shows, or are you looking at tapping into current hosting platforms for data, that's related to a show? Or what's your thinking about how you're going to get that data? I think you had mentioned relationships with players, right?
Yes. Yeah, all of the
talk
above. I think that players provide a pretty great look of reach and actual plays, which
Right.
is useful. The redirect is something that we more recently are looking at, something that our podcasters on our platform are asking us to do, and to have that inside the platform as like, having more things be in one spot is helpful. And then obviously, like, as we develop more relationships with hosting platforms, whatever makes the consumer happy is generally what we try to go towards. So I think, to answer your question, I think there's an opportunity of all of the above and combining those things to make a really powerful analytics dashboard.
Well, one thing's for sure, we're going to have the Blueberry redirect, the PodTrack redirect, the Chartable redirect, one other company. At a certain point, we're going to run out of redirects. So
yeah.
So are we going to have to come up with a company that aggregates the redirects?
PodJuicer. Here we go.
Well, then you run into GDPR issues. So it's not like you can have one person be the redirect collector and then aggregate data out, because it is
Right.
a privacy problem that, it's very, very hard to overcome.
Yeah.
But anyway, it's my 2 cents worth on that. Not that we do stats or anything. So I think too is, what you guys have started with and what you've built to. I think you guys have put a lot of labor and love into this thing, and it's, you're getting some momentum, and that's good.
Thank you.
But do you feel though that, for a show like mine, I don't think people are going to go to your site, but I think for this show, maybe people come over there and review who a guest was or something. I don't know. What are you seeing your cross section of users mostly being?
You mean like what?
Yeah,
what their interests are?
Yeah, what's the high? What's
the genres?
What's
right?
the top 5 that they come over and look for information on?
Audio drama is number one. Definitely. Our users love audio drama. And I think that's a really exciting vertical within podcasting, because it's just some pretty amazing playground of possibilities where the interview format is tried and true. I wouldn't say it's like formulaic. I don't think that's a bad thing, but for the most part, the interview podcasts have a formula that they follow. So audio dramas the possibilities are endless. And so it's been really fun to watch that feedback loop with our podcasters and our listeners, and helping kind of move forward that medium and make it better and better. So that's a big one. True crime is huge. People love murder. People love gruesome human beings for some reason, which is really disturbing. When you think about true crime being like really popular, it's really disturbing. What else? Are
you seeing the vast majority or a large percentage of the people that are participating on your site around true crime are women?
Yep.
Wow.
Yeah. That's an interesting kind of psychological, societal kind of uniqueness
Fellas,
factor.
don't piss off your wives and lock the knives up.
Right.
Definitely skews to women, and sadly, the victims of true crime podcasts tend to be women. So it's it's real weird.
Right.
Yeah, I don't know the answer to that. That's above my pay grade. But audio drama, true crime, business. I mean, it's all interview shows. Obviously, do really well. The McElroy family empire has a good following on our platform. Mm-hmm. That's such an incredible content machine that they've churned out. So yeah, it's a bit of everything, but those are the highlights, I think, for sure. Podcasts about podcasting do really well. Most of our early adopters are podcasters, and so they listen to shows like this and know all the insiders. So
that's cool. So speaking of podcasting, let's talk just about what was reported here, I think yesterday, that 91,000 podcasts were approved last month. That is simply a mind-boggling number.
Yeah. When you think about it, right? In a year, we could add almost 1.2 million new shows.
91,000 new shows in a single month.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's record growth on our platform too, on the Libsyn platform. Yeah, it's just unbelievable what's happening.
That's why I went home yesterday and collapsed. I'm actually after this show, I'm meeting at 2:00 with a couple of my team members. We're working all afternoon. Yeah, I've never worked a Saturday. So it's pretty incredible. It really, really is. 91,000 new podcasters. Now, what's going to happen?
Podcast.
What's going to happen next month? How many of those are going to pod fade? That is the question, right?
Yeah, I mean, you guys know those metrics more than me, but what percentage of podcasts don't make it past, one episode? What is it, 75% or more?
Well, it depends on the platform you're on.
It does actually depend a lot on the platform that you're on, and how much you're paying to be there.
Or not.
Right. Yeah.
So I think that has
commitment follows commitment, and that's typically what we see out there.
Yeah.
But that's a big number, 91,000. Yeah. So I guess we'll see over time what happens there. But I don't know. We don't have time to. We see the numbers, but we're head down so hard that if I want the statistics, I have to ask Angelo 2 weeks in advance so he can write a script to pull it out of the data, and then he becomes annoyed with me because I'm holding him up from doing other stuff. So,
though, Todd, I know I've mentioned this in the past too, and it seems appropriate to mention it again, though, that that kind of growth rate of content, are we in the danger zone potentially of getting into a situation where the growth rate of content outpaces the growth rate of audience based on what we're seeing in a lot of the platforms? We're seeing pretty significant declines. I guess it depends on what genres of content are being created at that, at that pace, right? Where are new podcasters coming into the medium? Is it in the areas that are driving audience right now, or is it pretty much across the board like always? And I'm just worried that maybe the market for podcasts gets out of balance a little bit.
I'm not seeing an appreciable bounce in volume, volume
of listening.
Yeah, right? I'm not seeing appreciable bouncing. It's just that's pretty steady That's that
Right.
flat
Right.
line, but this spike of new podcasts. So again, it's exciting to see 91,000 people join, but what happens if they don't have any listeners in 2 months and they become discouraged and leave? But it also depends on the reason they're starting a podcast. For us, it's been businesses are desperate to have a cheaper way to reach their audience. They're not having
their
to go.
Customers.
Their
right.
customers. They don't have to go out and spend TV buy. They don't have to buy radio buy. They don't have to go buy a Facebook ad. They can do this relatively low cost and use their social media platform to push out the message that they would have normally spent X tens of thousands of dollars of advertising to do, which doesn't bode well for the advertising side. So,
right. Yeah, because we have seen adjustments in the advertising side too. I think there's been some data come out here that there's a rebalancing of where spending is happening. But there has been an overall decline in advertising already in this medium, though some genres are getting more money now than before. So
I would suspect, based upon the previous 2008 whack, that the advertising dollar spend is not going to change that much. I think the advertising dollar spend will be about the same. It's just going to be moved around.
It's just a rebalancing of priorities, right? Based on the market situation. Yeah.
You look at television. I was watching more TV than I ever had because I'm just stuck at the house. I can't do anything else. It took about 6 weeks for the ads on TV to react. Some people were really quick. They were quick and dirty ads. They got together. Now almost every ad has been replaced. The creative has been replaced on most advertising to reflect the current situation. But it took them about 6 weeks to react on the creative. And 6 weeks in this time frame was a lifetime. So
it's a long time.
Right. Yeah. And in podcasts, we had PSAs running, a PSA campaign running in 7 days, and so I don't know how quick it took for radio to react because I wasn't listening to radio.
Yeah, I mean, I could see it in the TV ads too. The older quality, or not quality, but the older types of productions for TV ads that showed, large groups of people together, or people doing stuff together, or people out in public, together more. Now the ads that you're seeing now are running spots that are sensitive to the current climate.
But I think some of those ads are better than the ads they had on before. They're more organic. They're more podcast
sympathetic.
Not necessarily sympathetic. Well, maybe sympathetic, but
yeah, they are.
They are, but they're also they're not as polished. They're raw. They're raw. They're really raw. They're good, but they're raw.
Because they had to get put together quickly?
And maybe not quickly, but they had to be put together in a different way. They couldn't have an advertising shoot someplace.
Oh, yeah. Well, it's the same topic that's being talked about in Hollywood right now. When are the TV and movie productions going to start up again? And are we going to eventually here over the next month or so start running out of new series on Netflix, and there's going to be a fall off on
if the
new content creation, right?
If the California governor has his way, 2 years. So
I hear September is when Hollywood opens back up through the grapevine.
Well,
we're going to run out of content for sure. There are Waco, which is I think number 8 on Netflix. That content's from 2018. They just bought it. Like they're going to go hunting for more content to buy and redistribute. So we're going to run out for sure.
So maybe there's an opportunity here for some podcasters, some of these storytellers, and some of those folks. There's a bigger opportunity here for some conversions.
But Todd, I mean, in some ways, some of these storytelling podcasts are running into the same issue because a lot of them either do group productions, especially if they're audio dramas, that are using Foley effects and casts and those kind of things. I think those productions are definitely at risk. So I think that a lot of the factors that are plaguing TV and movies, for some sectors of the podcast space, that it's going to have an impact on them too.
I think I like the idea that this pandemic is essentially accelerating our technology path by 5 years and 5 weeks. So the quality of remote recordings and the quality of people's home studios, and it's going to be forced to get really good. And then that's a great thing. It opens the door to have an audio drama with somebody in Norway,
right?
And so I think it'll be a good thing overall. But it's gonna be some crappy audio for a while until we get there.
Yeah, and you're seeing it even with music right now, right? Where you have a drummer in one location and a singer in another location and a guitarist in another location, all doing a joint Zoom call, playing music together.
Wild.
It is an interesting change and shift that you just haven't seen that very often before.
So there's a question being asked, and it's from Peter Stark. But before I do that, here's a picture of the meeting we had. And we had the audio was fantastic. I had my team on from Blueberry. We had a team call for 2 hours, right? And a little longer than that. And then I had some of my team members that were involved in some interviews on some new product announcements we're making that have never, ever recorded even in a regular studio. We did it over Zoom and it worked out well. I just made sure he was on on some sort of wired headset. So I think the new norm is being figured out pretty quickly, even by members of my team. Hey, so Peter asks, how is PodJuicer different from how podcast receivers, I don't know what that quite is, gather their podcast listening? Does PodJuicer provide APIs for the podcast receivers to use? I don't know what I guess that's a podcast receiver would be an app. So,
well, like a listening app or something.
Yeah.
I don't quite understand the question, but I think maybe we are developing an API for podcatchers to use to have a more elegant solution for keeping up with episodes and podcasts. And we've had to do a lot of work to prevent duplications and spam, and we want to kind of redistribute that out. So yeah, we have an API for players for that, but also for our ratings and reviews, and for our creators. We're coming out with our kind of a 2.0 version of that soon, and we're also working on an OAuth capability with player apps so that they can start leaving the ratings and reviews within the app themselves. And it's going to be this. We're really excited about the idea of a rating left in one app showing up in other apps that go through PodJuicer. So I'm not sure if I answered the question, but
I think he was referring to podcast listening apps.
Yeah.
So Peter says Yahoo Directory used to have podcast listings, but when that went away, podcast receivers or podcast app for the discovery tool. So does PodJuicer ask the apps to show their content? And you just referred to it. You're starting to get into some apps.
Yes.
Yeah. Hey guys, can you believe it? We're already at 90 minutes. So
I know, it's amazing how time flies when you're having fun.
We're having fun.
Yeah. So before we bounce out of here, was there any other news, Rob, that we needed to cover?
I don't think so. I think we accomplished our goals for today.
All right.
So unless Bradley, is there anything else that you wanted to mention about your platform in the last couple minutes here?
I guess one thing that I didn't touch on that will be coming pretty soon is discussions. This is a very even trickier than ratings and reviews, but I've seen, I think most people see that discussions take place in a very fragmented way across bizarre forums, subreddits, Facebook groups, Twitter, and they're fairly ephemeral. And so it's another kind of piece of our vision is having discussions tied to one place, anchored to our data structure, so that a discussion about an episode is always attached to that episode. So yeah, we're excited about that. I think discussions and providing a place for your community to gather and to find each other and to discuss things is a huge opportunity. Other than that, pretty much it.
What's the best way for them to reach you?
You just gotta follow our Twitter account, PodJuicer. It's run by Dave Dave on our team, and it's great stuff, guys. You're gonna learn a lot from our Twitter account.
Well, Bradley, good luck in selling your house in this environment. Let us know how that goes.
Thank you.
Interest rates are low, so people are going to be looking for some deals, but don't give them a deal. And
hey, I also want to ask too, Bradley, before you go, as far as signing up for PodJuicer, what's the sign up models that you guys have right now? Is there any premium models, or are you just all free and you're looking for signups from podcasters as well as listeners? What's the model here?
Totally free. We're our website. You can sign up on any device, any platform that has a web browser. We want all podcasters. We want all listeners. We take it all. So make an account, start leaving ratings and reviews, and you'll start getting followers and become part of the ecosystem.
Mike says we need an audio stream we can listen to on the go. I thought about doing something like that, but it's on my list.
What for this show?
Yeah. So maybe fire up a Shoutcast stream or something, put it up. So it's simple enough. I was thinking about it a couple of weeks ago, and matter of fact, I've got a tab open on one of my computers that is on one of those pages. So we'll consider it, Mike. Thanks. All right. Anyway, I guess that's it. Todd at blueberry.com. At Geek News is my personal Twitter account, or at Blueberry's the company one. Rob?
I'm on Twitter as at Rob Greenlee with 2 E's, and you can reach me via email if you have anything that you want to reach out to me about. Send it to robg@lipson.com, and I also have a website, robgreenlee.com too.
So we want to thank Bradley for being on and spending some time with us today here on the New Media Show, and we'll be back with you on Wednesday at 3 p.m. Eastern, 12 noon Pacific for another edition of this show. At least,
and we may have a couple of interesting guests.
Oh, okay. I know the one email went up in smoke. He never replied, but we won't say who that is, Marco. But anyway,
but I have a couple others that are coming.
Oh, awesome! So
Marco doesn't do email, don't you know?
Oh, he does on occasion. Yes.
What does he do? Twitter?
I don't think he does any communication.
I
think that's his thing.
Yeah. He can be a little hard to reach sometimes. Yeah.
Well, that's become evident. Anyway, everyone, thanks for being here. We'll see you next time here on the New Media Show. Everyone, take care. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
Thanks, guys.
Okay. Thanks.